Hi guys, and welcome to Accounting Learn Extra Live. I've got Martin next to me. How are you?
Hi, Indy. I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Happy Valentine's Day.
To you as well.
It is the day of love. It's actually the month of love. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the mindsetters to pay it forward with those random acts of kindness. Martin's already said to me, so don't you want to do the show? And I said, of course, Martin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Martin across. We're going over ethics and internal controls, right?
Yes, that's what we're doing.
Okay, fantastic. So you guys better be joining in. Martin, go and get ready by your board, and I'll tell them everything they need to know. Okay, guys, this is what you need to know. You need to tune into facebook.com/learn extra. You need to post all of your questions on the page, and we will be helping you throughout the session. You can also chat to me, Indy, on Twitter @learnextra. And before we go, I'm a stuck record, but there is this very important thing that you need to know. It's where you're going to get your schedules, it's where you're going to get your notes, and it's where you're going to watch previous week's videos. And that is www.learnextra.co.za/live. So I think I'm not going to waste any more time, and Martin, I'm going to send it straight across to you. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much, Indy, and hello, Mindsetters. What we're going to do today is we're going to discuss ethics and internal controls. Now, this is a section that you're probably familiar with because it has been covered in grade 10 and grade 11 as well, but it is something that can come up in almost any question. So it is something that you need to think carefully about. It's something that you have to know about. So I'm going to start off just describing the objectives of what we're going to do tonight. First of all, you need to understand some key ethical concepts, which I'm going to explain to you. Then we're going to go through some of the principles of internal control. Then we will explain the difference between external and internal auditors, and then apply some ethical and control measures to solve accounting problems. And tonight's problem is going to have to do with bank reconciliation, which is grade 11 work, but which can be asked to you in grade 12 as well. So the first thing that we need to look at are some key concepts in ethical behavior. Ethical behavior is something that's probably close to our hearts today because it's Valentine's Day and because we're speaking about this pay it forward and this kindness, which Indy's already told you about. So, Indy, what does it mean to you to be ethical?
For me to be ethical, to be true to myself, to be kind to others, to be not breaking the law.
Not breaking the law.
Is that number one?
That's going to be the number one thing that we need to make sure of, that we as accountants, if you're an accountant student and you're going to become an accountant someday, it's going to be very important for you to be sure that what you're doing is legal, what you're doing is ethical, and what you're doing is basically just being good to your fellow human beings. So very often, a business will have something that they call a code of ethics. A code of ethics, I'm sure you've heard of this before. This is simply an ethical code that sort of tells employees what they should be doing, tells employees how they should behave ethically, tells employees what is right and what is wrong. So I'm just going to put a short definition here for you. It's a code that governs the conduct of employees. It really tells you how you should behave. And at various schools, you might have a code of conduct which tells you what you should do, how you should wear your uniform, what is the right way to treat your teachers, what is the right way to show respect to your classmates. That would be a type of code of ethics. And a business can use a code of ethics in order to help its employees behave in an ethical or in a good manner. Now, some principles in ethics that you will see in many of the textbooks are, firstly, transparency. If something is transparent, it means that you can see through it. So when we deal with transparency in an ethical manner, it means that decisions that are made in the business must be clear. We need to know why the business has behaved in that way. We need to know what procedures were followed. We need to know what the business has done and what conditions the business has chosen in order to apply their rules. So for example, if somebody gets promoted, if an employee gets promoted, we would like to know whether the business has been free and fair in promoting that person. So those would be principles of transparency. The second one that's very important that you'll see often is accountability. Almost has the name of our subject, accounting. If we are discussing accountability, it means that there are people that take responsibility for what's going on in the business. So for example, let's say that you have gone to a shop and you're dissatisfied with the service. If somebody comes and helps you and gives you good service and solves your problem, then that person has been taking accountability for their actions. So accountability is simply going to be taking responsibility, that there is somebody in the business that you can speak to deal with your particular issue. Okay, another very, very important one. You'll often see this, and this is particularly important for somebody who is an accountant, is due care. Due care just means that the person in the job has tried everything that they can to make sure that what they're doing is correct. So for instance, if a nurse in a hospital was to show due care, she would have to make sure that she checks up on her patients, that she does everything she can to prescribe the correct medicine, and so on and so forth. For an accountant, due care means checking the books, making sure that the books balance, filling in everything in the best possible way. So due care is just, if you are an accountant, you will make sure that you handle the books according to what you've been taught, according to your ability. Then another important one is integrity. Integrity is just something showing good moral behavior, being trustworthy, never breaking your promises, never going back on your word. If somebody were to live like that with integrity, then everybody would think that that is a very good person and that person is behaving in a good, ethical manner. Now, another thing that often comes up, I'm just showing you some keywords that you might see in a question. There is something called a conflict of interests. This you will see often, and you might have to identify it and use that terminology in an exam or in a test situation. A conflict of interest comes in when there is a person in a business that has got a conflict of interests with another person. For instance, what might happen, let's say that I own a computer shop and I've got an employee, and that employee is working for me, and what this employee does is repair computers. Let's say also that that employee has got a computer shop at home. Now somebody comes in to have their laptop or their computer repaired, and that employee of mine says, listen, come to my house tonight and I'll charge you half the price of what this shop is charging you. My house is just around the corner. That client will then leave my business and go and take his computer to my employee. And that is a conflict of interests. This just arises when there are possible conflicts between employees or between people because of the relationship between them. For instance as well, let's say that a boss promotes her husband to a senior management role. Okay? That could cause a conflict of interest if there was another person that might be much more qualified, much more experienced, but that person's not getting the job because the boss wants to give her husband a better position. So something like that could cause a conflict of interest. Now, there are just a couple of other things, a couple of other pieces of terminology that you might encounter with ethics. We've just had the African Cup of Nations, so I'm sure many of you have been watching some of the games, and you may have seen the referees with their whistles. In ethics, you might sometimes see something called whistleblowing. That is not what happens on the football field. What that actually is if you discover unethical behavior in a business and you tell somebody about it. So, this is discovering unethical behavior, and what you then do is you tell someone. Sorry, I've spelled behavior the American way. Let me just change it. So you discover unethical behavior in a business, and you actually blow the whistle. It's almost as if you're calling the cops. You're getting people to investigate. You're getting people to commit fraud. So let's say, for example, that your boss comes to you and says that he has stolen some money from the business, or you discover that your boss has stolen money from the business. If you go and tell somebody more important or somebody higher up, you are actually committing whistleblowing. You are making people aware that a problem is occurring. So, Indy, what do you think about whistleblowing? Do you think that somebody should do that?
I do. I really, really think. I think if there are problems, it needs to come out, and I think everything should be transparent, and everyone should be above board, and it's all about honesty. To be honest, that's what I think. My opinion.
All about honesty, and I agree with you totally. So what we should do in a business is we should try and make sure that all the people participating in the business are always behaving ethically, and if they discover that somebody is doing something wrong, I believe that they should blow the whistle. Of course, mindset is sometimes if you blow the whistle, you could yourself get into trouble, because if your boss finds out that you know that he's been stealing money from the business, he might get very upset with you, and he might treat you badly at work, or he might try and cut your salary, or he might just be plain horrible to you.
Now, lots of people don't want to whistleblow because it does put them in that exact predicament. Yeah.
Exactly.
It should be made easier to whistleblow, I think. There should be more protection.
Definitely more protection.
Yeah.
So if you are ever in a situation like that, you will need to weigh up the consequences of blowing the whistle. I personally believe that it's the right thing to do. If you discover fraud and corruption, you should immediately tell somebody that's important about it. Okay, then there's another one that's particular to your grade 12 syllabus, which is insider trading. Insider trading comes up a lot in questions, and I'm sure you've seen it in some of the past papers that you've been working through. So you need to understand what we mean by insider trading. If we talk about insider trading, what this means is that you, as a shareholder in a company that also is working for that company, find out some special information, and you buy or you sell shares based on that information that nobody else knows. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I am the CFO of a big company, and I discover that in 1 year we are going to make a massive loss. It's going to be the biggest loss in the history of this company, and tomorrow we're going to announce it. What will I do? I'll immediately go and sell my shares left, right, and center to anybody I can find, because I know that tomorrow when I make that announcement, the share price is going to fall down. Would you do that, Indy?
I wouldn't be able to, because I wouldn't be able to look the people that I've sold the shares to in the face. I'd be very embarrassed, actually.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because you are going to sell something to people, and then tomorrow they're going to lose all their money. So that is something that's very, very unethical, and there are severe sentences and penalties in South Africa for committing insider trading. So it just really means that if you own shares in a business, you should not buy or sell them based on information that only you have. Okay, then you just also need to understand the terms fraud and corruption. Fraud really just arises in any business situation where you are doing something that is unethical. You are falsifying documents, or you are falsifying information. You're basically lying to somebody in order to take the money for your own benefit. So for example, let's say that an employee has been asked to buy some TV monitors for the boardroom. Let's say they want to have video conferencing or something like that, and they want to buy TV monitors for the boardroom. So what they then do is they are supposed to buy 10 TV monitors, but then they decide, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I want a TV monitor like that for my own house. So they just write an invoice for 11 TV monitors, and then the company has to pay the money, and they take the TV monitors for themselves. Mindset is, don't try this sort of thing, because if you do, you're committing fraud, and there'll be penalties if you get caught. Similar to fraud, it's a word that we hear very often, is corruption. Corruption is very similar to fraud, except that it's more than one person all grouping together to try to act unethically. So in the previous example that I used, it's one employee that was writing out the false invoice for those TVs. In corruption, the whole management team would decide to buy lots and lots and lots of TVs and take them for their own consumption, but bill the business so that they can all get away with it. So fraud and corruption are things that should be avoided, and we should try to root them out. If you discover fraud and corruption in your business someday, what you should do is you should blow the whistle and do the right thing, do the moral thing. So those are just some terms that you will sometimes discover when we're dealing with ethics. Now, we know what is ethical and what is unethical, and we know that there's a code of ethics that tells us what the right thing to do is. But the next question is, how do we actually stop this unethical behavior? And that leads us to the next section called controls. Usually in the textbook they have separate chapters for ethics and for controls. And what we're going to do is look at the controls as a separate thing. A control is something that tries to limit or stop or prevent unethical behavior in a business. So it would be something that you as the boss or the manager of the business put in to try to stop your employees from behaving unethically. So the textbooks usually list different types of controls, and I've got some here that are important for you to understand and know about. So the first one is what we call a detective control. Most of them end on IVE. Actually, all 4 of them end on IVE. A detective control, that comes from the word to detect. A detective control is going to be something that lets you identify when there is a case of unethical behavior. So I'm sure you've all seen this. We know that it's unethical to steal from shops. A detective control in the shop, can you think of one, Indy? How would a shop identify whether somebody is behaving unethically and stealing their products?
Or if you see them steal,
Right.
if maybe you're going through your stock inventory and then that's the worst, is that like a month later and you realize, oh, that's been stolen, and now you actually don't know. Or you just see them on the CCTV camera.
Exactly. So cameras are usually a very, very, very good answer when they ask you about detective controls. There was a past exam paper, which you may have seen before, where they said that in a hotel, there were towels being stolen off the rails by the customers or by the clients that were sleeping in the hotel rooms.
I do love hotel towels. Hotel towels are nice and white and fluffy. But not to steal though, guys, just saying.
Not to steal, just to use. And a possible control that a hotel could use, please do not say that they should put cameras in the bathrooms of the hotel. There need to be some other ways to do it, because then you are invading people's privacy. But detective controls could be various other things, such as maybe a metal detector or one of those scanners. You know, if you sometimes take a product out of the shop, then you sometimes see that scanner beeping and you hear the alarm. That will be a detective control, and that allows the shop to identify if and when unethical behavior is occurring. Please note, mindsetters, detective controls only let you identify. They do not stop it, they just let you know that something is happening. Another possible detective control would be an alarm system. If you don't want your car to be stolen, you could put an alarm in, and then it makes a noise when the car is being stolen. So detective control, remember, just lets you identify if and when unethical behavior is occurring. Indy, I don't know if it's time for a break, but we'll go for the others.
I would love a break. Would you like a break, Martin?
Yes, please.
I'm sure the mindsetters would love a break too. Guys, Matrix, you asked for accounting, and here it is. This means that we are listening to you, so I hope that you're tuning in. If you have any friends that do accounting and they don't know about the show, phone them now. Tell them that accounting is live on 319. We're going to take a little break. It's very hot. I might go get myself a glass of water or a cup of coffee, but let's get energized, because I think it's time to learn more and learn extra. See you now after the break. Hi guys, and welcome back to Learn Extra Live. It is grade 12 accounting. I'm so excited because last year, grade 12s, you kept moaning and saying, we need grade 12 accounting. So this is what we've done. You guys have your very own show. So I hope that you are all tuning in, writing down furiously, and posting your questions on facebook.com/learnextra, as well as tweeting me, Indy @learnextra. So now, if you're wondering what all this is, it's all about paying it forward, random acts of kindness, and Simba has kindly sponsored us this amazing hamper, the Cheetos hamper, never mind, and what we're giving away is this hamper, as well as lots of chips, an awesome mindset t-shirt, a Cheetos little notepad, some Mindset Learn pens, like the prize is just too big to actually even mention, and then because it's the month of love, you obviously need a little bit of a love soundtrack. And in this, we've got, this is 3 CDs, the only love songs album you will ever need. We've got Malik, Music of Love. We've got Kaya, For You. We've got Donald, Train of Love. And we've got Unati, With Love. Proudly sponsored by Universal. Thanks, guys, for giving these awesome prizes. And what all you need to do, guys, is post your pictures or videos on our event page, our Paying It Forward event page, and post a picture, a video, but also words. If there's something that you've been doing, you can post your little story there on the page. There have been a few stories that have been coming through, and I think you guys know who you are. Let me have a look here. I just want to read something out to you quickly, because it's not about big things. It's not about buying things for people. It's about doing small things, paying it forward, creating that ripple effect. You might hold the door open for somebody, and that somebody will just be so touched by your kindness that they will then help somebody carry their bags, and it will just carry on like that and that and that. Nathlantla said, today I paid taxi. He paid a taxi fee for an old lady who was walking by the freeway. That's amazing. That's really incredible. And that is what I'm saying, that it's those small acts of kindness. Pay it forward, guys. Post them on our events page. And next week, you could be the proud winner of this prize. It's not about the prize, even though it's cool, but I promise you, once you pay it forward, you will get it back 1,000 times over. Okay, Martin, I'm done. Let's carry on with the counting. Take it away.
Okay, thanks very much, Indy. And I must admit that prize looks absolutely wonderful, and I was thinking that maybe you should implement some controls to stop people in the studio or me, myself, from eating some of those Cheetos.
I've already, Abram and James, our director, I keep having to smack their hands away from the chips.
Right, so what you've implemented there is the next type of control, which we can call a preventative control. Okay, it would be unethical for me or Abram or James to steal those Cheetos. But if Indy watches them all the time and has got her hand ready to slap anybody who's trying to help themselves to it, then she is stopping the unethical behavior completely. So she could watch those things 24/7. She could chain them to her chair. She could handcuff them to herself. And that would be a preventative control because it absolutely stops the unethical behavior from happening.
Yes.
But why wouldn't you want to handcuff those Cheetos to yourself?
I know. Why? Who's going to be my preventative measure? That's what I need to know. Who's going to prevent me from taking the Cheetos? I
That's a good
won't,
question.
guys. Don't worry. This is your prize. It's all good.
So preventative control is something that might be, it's guaranteed to stop the unethical behavior, but it would be inconvenient for Indy to sit and watch that all the time. And it would be very inconvenient to walk around town with the Cheetos handcuffed to your arm. So the truth is, very often, a preventative control could be expensive or it could be inconvenient. I mean, we could even hire a bodyguard for those Cheetos to stop them getting stolen, but then we'd have to pay that person quite a lot of money, so that's what I mean that it would be expensive. But in some cases, a preventative control is very, very, very important. It's something that will absolutely stop it from happening. Okay, but now let's say those Cheetos get stolen. What we need to do is reverse the effects of unethical behavior, and there we would have what we call a corrective control. So this comes from the word correct, which means to fix something. So it reverses the effects of unethical behavior. It's any type of control that helps you get back the thing that you have lost or fix the thing that you have lost. So for example, we could insure those Cheetos. We could pay insurance. Very, very often, a corrective control is insurance. Because if they get stolen, well, the insurance will pay out and we'll be able to buy some more. Another corrective control with specific reference to a car, for example, you could install a satellite tracker in your car. So if your car gets stolen, well, you just call the tracker company and they bring your car back to you if they can find it. So that would also be a corrective control. So remember, there's detective, preventative, and corrective. Now, the last one is a little bit different. It's called a directive control. In a directive control, what we actually try to do is we change people's mindsets. You are all mindsetters, so you'll know what a mindset is. But you change the thought process of a person to make sure that they do not engage in unethical behavior. So an example of this is, let's say that there is a company that is manufacturing chocolates. And the workers sometimes get hungry and they eat some of the chocolates that are being manufactured. That is unethical because they are actually eating the profits of the company. So what the company could do is try and put in some type of directive control. And the directive control is usually either some type of reward or it is some type of punishment. So we could put in the reward and we could say, if we've got very few chocolates that are being lost to theft, or if we're meeting our targets of sales, then maybe all the employees could get a day off, or all the employees could get a Christmas bonus. Or we could take some money off the salary of the workers as a punishment if they are caught eating any of the chocolates, or if too many chocolates get lost or broken. So that would be a directive control to try and change the mindsets of people. What you should do when you're answering a question like this, I've said that it comes up in all sorts of different questions. So you could get a question on companies with ethics in. You could get a question on bank reconciliation with ethics in. There's a whole lot of stuff that could include ethics or include internal controls. The truth is, there's not always a right and a wrong answer, and there's not always a best answer to answer an ethical problem. But you need to think very carefully and say, what would be a good detective control? What would be a good preventative control? How could we stop or limit the unethical behavior from taking place? So if you understand this, and if you just think about the answers to the question and try and say something that's logical and that's justified, you will get good marks. Now, in a business, we would also have internal and external auditors. And internal and external auditors are very, very important in a business because what they try to do is prevent or stop unethical behavior from happening. So I'm sure you've studied the section already about auditing. An auditor is going to check the books of a company and going to make sure that there's no fraud, that there's no corruption. And a public company like the ones that you're studying, by law, they have to appoint an external auditor. Do you know any big auditing firms, Indy?
Gosh, I don't, not offhand.
I wonder if any of the mindsetters do. Think of some, and I'm going to tell you after I've explained the difference between an internal and an external auditor. If we've got internal auditors, the internal auditor is somebody that works in the business. So what might happen is that we would appoint a person that's good with accounting in our business to check our books and to make sure that we have not made any mistakes, to make sure that no money is being lost or stolen, just basically to make sure that nothing unethical is happening. And that would be a person that works for us, right? And when that person spots the problem, all we do is we put measures in place to fix it. So we would put in one of those preventative or directive or corrective controls to fix the problem that has occurred. Now, when your books go to the external auditor, you don't get a second chance to fix it because the external auditor is going to prepare something called an audit report. And this audit report is going to tell you whether the auditor is satisfied or dissatisfied with your books. And you could end up in some trouble if the auditor finds any irregularities, if they find any fraud, or if they find any problems in this business. So what you need to understand is that the internal auditor works for you, and she tries to pick up the problems before we pass it on to the external auditor. Because once the external auditor is looking at it, there's no second chance.
I have a question. Like in class. So now what happens if the internal auditor doesn't pick up the problem and then it goes to the external and then they get into trouble for being fraudulent when actually the internal auditor should have actually said to the company, hey guys, fix this?
That's a very good question. I could probably say that that company would need to try and review who they are appointing as an internal auditor. Or perhaps they'd need to investigate whether or not that internal auditor isn't maybe part of some fraud or some cover-up or something going on. So if the external auditor picks it up, then there could be penalties for the business, there could be fines, there could be court cases, there could be all sorts of things going on if the external auditor discovers fraud. But really, it's the role of the internal auditor to try and stop it before it happens.
So make sure that you've got a really good internal auditor that you trust and know.
Exactly. Make sure that it's somebody that studied accounting, maybe with mindset.
Yeah.
Another important thing, if you want to compare this, you can think about it this way. At the end of this year, the Department of Education is going to mark your final exams. So you're writing an external exam that's going to be marked. So your teachers are almost like your internal auditors because they have to pick up that you're not making mistakes and they have to fix the mistakes that you are making so that when you get to the external exam, you are then able to answer it correctly and there are not going to be mistakes that are made. So the teacher is supposed to pick up the mistakes that you're making and help you to correct them. So the role of an auditor in the business, we've kind of explained what it is. The auditor is supposed to check to see that the necessary controls are in place to make sure that accounting fraud or various other unethical behavior does not occur. Here's just a quick tip for answering ethics questions. I've said here that ethics and controls are usually asked as part of another question. So what they could do is they could give you a company ledger account and a company set of financial statements, and then afterwards they could ask you to give some or other accounting control or some ethical comment about whether this company is being ethical or not. So as long as your answer makes sense and as long as it's justified, you should score very, very well in the question. You should be able to identify whether something is ethical or unethical. I think most of us know the difference between right and wrong. And if you're able to identify that, then you need to be logical and be specific. Don't just say vague things. For instance, I often mark ethics questions where somebody would just say it's unethical because it's against the law. I don't think that that's enough of an answer. You need to say why something is wrong with that. Like when I asked Indy why insider trading was wrong, she was able to point out that you are stealing money from those poor shareholders that are buying your shares. So what you need to do is be specific and don't just say something's wrong because it's against the law. And you also need to think very carefully and very logically to make sure that you get used to that the answer that you give actually fits the question. So those are the ethical controls, and those are the ethics. And I'm now going to show you a past exam paper, which we're going to work through together in the last half an hour of the show. And it's an example of how ethics and controls are brought in to another type of question. I think that last week you learned about bank reconciliation, and you should be able to answer this first question. You can see that we've been given a bank reconciliation statement on the 29th of February 2012 for this particular business, Tijuana Traders. And you can see that they've given you all of this information and they've given you a question mark over there. Now, there's a balances per bank statement, there's an outstanding deposit, outstanding checks, and then you need to calculate the balances per the bank account because there is a question mark. Very often, a question like this in Matric will involve analyzing a bank reconciliation statement rather than necessarily doing it. You need to know how to prepare a bank reconciliation statement, but very importantly, you also need to know how to analyze it. So you could get given a completed one and you need to look at it and be able to answer a set of questions about it. So they've also been quite tricky with this question because usually there are two columns in a bank reconciliation statement, and all they've done is given you one column and they haven't even given you negatives or positives. So you need to know the format of the bank reconciliation statement very well in order to work out what's going on here. So if we look at the first question asks us to calculate the balance of the bank account in the books of Tijuana Traders on the 29th of February. Don't get confused between the two. If you are asked to calculate the balance on the bank account, this is the balance that is in your books. So it is not the balance as per the point of view of the bank. The balance from the point of view of the bank is the one that will be printed on your bank statement, and it will be called the balance as per the bank statement. So if we look back here, you'll see that we've been given the balance as per the bank statement. So this one is from the bank's point of view. So we're about to go to another break, I think, Indy. What I'd like to do is ask the mindsetters to have a look at this and see if you can figure out how to calculate this missing bank balance, and we'll tell you the answer after the break.
I love that idea. 'Cause you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a screen grab and I'm going to post that very picture on the Facebook wall. So what you can do is you can then download it to your phone, guys, and you can work on it during this break. So use these 2 minutes wisely, and we'll see you now after the break. Hi grade 12 accountants, welcome back to Learn Extra Live. I hope that you're enjoying the lesson as much as we are. I think that there's literally something like 15 minutes left. It's ridiculous how fast time goes when you are having fun. I just want to say happy Valentine's Day to all of you guys out there. Mo, KB, Hope, Beloy, who else is on the page? Another KB, so that's KB times 2 for Yiswa. Happy Valentine's to you guys today, and thank you so much for tuning in, and keep those questions coming on the Facebook page, also on Twitter at Learn Extra. I think Martin, let's get going, because I think we've got a lot to answer before the end of the show. Guys, pay attention. Martin, take it away.
Thanks very much, Indy. I'd just like to answer a learner that wrote during the break and that said, what are the guidelines for misconduct if you're dismissing somebody for misconduct. Okay, that's something that I can't really discuss at that much length in 15 minutes, but what I'd just like you to do, very often learners just answer in their questions, fire them. And they just say, even if you suspect somebody of something, just fire that person, get rid of them. Why do you think that one couldn't just fire a person left, right, and center, Indy?
Well, first of all, I know of this thing called the, CCMA?
CCMA.
Which pretty much protects you. Like, I know you have to give warnings. You can't just fire somebody because sometimes it could be your opinions or your views. You actually have to have cold, hard facts, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're answering a question about an employee that needs to be dismissed because of misconduct, what you need to bear in mind is that you have to have all the facts before you can actually make a proper case against a person. So you have to actually have enough evidence. Very often, it would be a good idea to say, give that person first a written warning, because I think everybody in life deserves a second chance. And then if you've got written documentation, keeping it on record, then you can eventually go the route of having a disciplinary hearing and perhaps having that person dismissed. But don't just answer the question and say fire the person, because you're opening yourself up to all sorts of legal problems. What you should always say is give a proper investigation first, because everybody is innocent until they are proven 100% guilty. And then you need to get the paperwork in place, because by law you're required to give written warnings first before just dismissing a person. However, if it was something very, very serious, like a criminal act or something like that, then perhaps a good idea would be to open a police case against that person, because if a person is convicted, then they'll end up in jail and then can't come to work anymore. So just bear those things in mind. In ethics, there are not always right and wrong answers. You need to take the facts of every case into consideration. Okay, so I was wondering whether you were able to work on this bank reconciliation statement during the break, and let's just have a look at what you should do here. I'll just move the calculator over here. So we started off with a balance as per the bank statement, and that was given to you as a credit. I'm sure you already remember this from grade 11, but a credit on a bank reconciliation statement is done from the bank's point of view. So that means that we have a positive bank balance from the bank's point of view. Okay, we know from our theory on bank reconciliation that an outstanding deposit is also always credited. So these two both appear on the credit side. The outstanding checks, you will know from your theory, are always debits. So we have here 3 items on the debit side. So the 3 checks are debits, the deposit and the bank statement balance are credits. So now we'll have to work out what the missing answer is here. What we'll just do is I'll call the calculator up on the screen. Pretty much we're just going to add the credit side and subtract the debit side and see what the bank balance is going to be. So I'm going to take 7,600 plus 1,450 minus the 3 checks of 500 minus 1,220 minus 980. So mine says your correct bank balance is 6,350 Rand. Indeed, did anybody send that in on Facebook?
Yes, somebody did, and he knows who it is. It is Rele Bohile, and he got the right answer. So congratulations, Mindset, for getting that answer. I think that's so cool.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
that's wonderful, and you did it fast as well, because we just took a quick
Faster
break.
than us.
Faster than us, definitely. So that was the first question. Your balance as per the bank statement was 6,350 Rand. Let me just write it here so that you can take it down when you're studying, 6,350 Rand. Now, because the time is limited, I'm not going to do the second question, which is not an ethical question either. I'll just write this here, 6,350 Rand, so that you have it. The second question was also really more of an accounting question. It asked us here whether we would be able to afford to pay the supplier for this. I think what we'll do is we'll post the answer on Facebook, because I'd rather get to the ethics, because that's what this show is about today. So you guys, you mindsetters, can try this at home, and we'll post the answer for you later on.
What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to post the question on Facebook, and then later on in this evening, I will post the answer, and let's see who gets it right.
Okay, brilliant.
They'd love a challenge question. Hey? Fantastic.
See if you can do it. And hand in hand with that, we'll go the second question, because C also relates to the previous answer. It says, what should you do about the outstanding amount? So this is just really accounting and bank reconciliation. I think it's going to be more important to discuss the ethical questions, which are the next few. So this is the type of ethical or control question. What you need to know about bank reconciliation is that a bank reconciliation statement is a very important control measure for any business. You draw up the bank reconciliation statement to check whether your outstanding deposits have actually been paid in by the bank and to check whether your outstanding checks have been paid out. Because if somebody is going to the bank and depositing money and that money never goes into your bank account, I'd be pretty upset about that, wouldn't you, Indy?
I'd be very upset. Yeah, very.
Because there's, in this example, have a look. In our question here, I've just got to get back to it, sorry. In our question here, we have got an outstanding deposit of 1,450 Rand. So what's happened is we've taken that money and put it into our bank account, but because it's still outstanding, that means that it's not yet reflecting in our bank account. I'd be quite mad if I went and deposited 1,450 Rand. It's a lot of money, and then it never appears in my bank account. So this is why a bank reconciliation statement is a control measure. And we would usually say that a bank reconciliation statement is a detective control, because remember what we said earlier about detective controls. They let you find out whether something is wrong or not. So you're able to check this bank reconciliation statement against your books, and you're able to pick up if there's possible fraud, if somebody might be stealing from you. Now, the question pretty much asked you, let's read the question carefully. Provide a possible reason for why the first outstanding check is numbered 5060 and the last two are consecutive. Remember, consecutive means one number following another, like 723 and 724. So let's go and see what this question actually means. We need to give a reason as to why the first outstanding check has a number 5060 and the last two checks are consecutive. Let's go back and have a look. Here is our bank reconciliation statement. Can you see that they are saying, why is this check numbered 5060 and why are these two checks numbered 7688 and 7689. Those two checks are consecutive. The one follows from the other. Well, as a control measure, you need to pay attention to this. If check 5060 is so far different from 7688 and 7689 in terms of number, you need to think of a reason. The main reason will be that this check, check 5060, must have been written out a long time before 7688 and 7689. You know that you will keep a CPJ, and in your CPJ, you've got document numbers, and they go consecutively. So 5060 would have been written sometime, then we'd have check 5061, 5062, 5063, and so on, until we get to check 7688, 7689. So there are over 2,000 checks that have been written since check 5060 and 7688. What we can conclude from this is that this check must have been outstanding for quite some time before these two checks were written out. Okay, so that would be a possible answer. We could just say as our answer that this check has been outstanding for a long time. Something must have happened. Perhaps the person that we gave the check to lost the check. Perhaps the check was stolen. Perhaps something happened that the company that you paid the check to doesn't exist anymore. And so often, a check that's been outstanding for a long time could be a stale check. So just remember, in a bank reconciliation statement, you should always be looking out for stale checks. They normally don't tell you that the check is stale, but remember, a check goes stale after 6 months. So if ever you see a check that's 6 months old, you'll know that that check cannot be used anymore. You will probably have to cancel that check and give the person that you paid the check to a new one. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Now it tells us some more about this check. Okay, it says check 5060, that's the check we've just been talking about, was for stock purchased from a supplier called Loaded Limited. It says that the bookkeeper of Loaded Limited phones Tijuana Traders. You must remember sometimes who's who in an accounting example. We, in this case, are Tijuana Traders, and we have paid this check to Loaded Limited. Now their bookkeeper is phoning us, and she says to us that she has lost the check. Remember I said earlier that that could be a possible cause as to why this check was never paid. And she says that we must issue them a new one. But now The manager of Tijuana Traders says that he does not want to issue a new check because he has already paid for the stock with check 5060. So he says, I've given you the check, I've made my payment, and you have gone and lost it. It's your fault, so I'm not going to give you a new one. Do you think that the manager's actions are ethical? Why or why not? What do you think about that, Indy?
What was the question again? I was so busy Facebooking.
Sorry, it just asked whether we should give a new check if a check has been lost or stolen.
I don't think so. I wouldn't. I would say no, because what's stopping them from losing it again, perhaps?
Right, so maybe we should try and pay it in another way. Maybe
Yeah.
we should pay them in cash, because this person is obviously a little bit unreliable. But you could also say that we should issue a new check, because if this person has lost the check, then you actually have never paid them that money. You've never paid them the money that you owed them. So if you look back at the bank reconciliation statement, the check was for, let's just have a look at it, the check was for 500 Rand. So even though you gave a person a check that says 500 Rand, that does not mean that you have actually paid them. How do you know that? Because the money has never, ever, ever left your account. I personally think that they should issue them a new check, or they should find another way of paying them that 500 Rand, because if they don't, they're going to be in trouble with this business, because that business isn't going to sell to them anymore. Let's say I've sold you something and you owe me 500 Rand, and you give me the money and I lose the check, then I might decide, okay, if you don't want to pay me for this, I'm never going to sell to you again. So that's something that you have to bear in mind. You can answer this question in any way you like, but you have to show a good understanding of ethics. Has the manager shown integrity? Do you think he is doing the right thing by not paying them for something that they have bought? So I've bought something from you, and you go and lose the check that I've used to pay you with, then I just say, well, sorry, I'm not giving you a new one. I don't think that that's right. I don't think that that displays integrity. So for 4 marks, you should write something about that, and you should say, my personal answer would be no, it's not ethical, because accidents happen. People lose things, people have things stolen. And they've been honest and they've been transparent, because they phoned us and they've said, we're really, really sorry, we've lost this check, please won't you just cancel it and give us a new one. I think to establish good relations with this supplier Loaded Limited is that you should give them a new check. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. Next question says, the office clerk of Tijuana Traders claims that she deposited the check for 1,450 Rand that is reflected in the outstanding deposit before the end of the month. The manager of the business is worried that she may have stolen the check for herself. And what he wants to do is fire her. Does that sound familiar? You suspect that somebody has stolen money from you, so you just decide right there and then, fire them, get out of the building. Why can't we do that, Indy?
We just can't. There's protection in place for employees, and like you said, sometimes you don't know the story. You haven't done investigation. Who knows? Maybe it's in her handbag and she just forgot to go and take the check. It could be anything, really.
Exactly. There could be all sorts of things in place. So have a look. It says that the manager is worried and that she may have stolen the check. He doesn't have any proof that she has stolen the check. So a very good answer here would be, he can't just fire her. So what he should do is he should do some further investigation. Perhaps he should ask her about it. Say to her, listen, I gave you the check for 1,450 Rand. What did you do with it? Why is it not reflected in our bank account? And if she doesn't give a good reason, then he might need to investigate and perhaps give her a warning. Another thing that he could do is, there's a problem here in this business. The office clerk is the person that is depositing the check. You will often see one person in a business that's responsible for something. It's usually not a good idea just to have one person doing things, because if there's only one person, there's no one that's checking up on her. She could have been innocent and have lost the check, it could have been stolen, it could have just vanished, or it could be that the bank has made a mistake. But if there are 2 people that go together, then you can always check that the other person, you've got somebody else that can keep a control. So you will very often be able to answer an ethical question by using the term division of duties. So you don't have just one person responsible for a particular duty. You divide it. You get 2 people to go with each other to the bank to deposit that money. If two people went, then it is much, much, much harder for one of them to say, I'm sorry, I did pay the money in, when the other person didn't see it. So for 3 marks, you need to say something other than just firing her, because you can't do that just on a suspicion. Okay, I think we've got time to answer another question. This is actually part of the previous one, where we're asking what action the manager of Tijuana Traders should take. For 2 marks there, you should just write something along the lines of investigate, try and do division of duties, and put an extra person in charge, so that we've got 2 people looking at it. And those were really all the questions that we had on this particular activity. Remember, when you are answering ethical questions, be sure that you consider the facts of the case. If the manager had caught this bookkeeper physically with her hand in the till, taking money out and putting it into her pocket, and if he's got camera evidence that she has done that, then his case is going to be much, much, much stronger than just suspecting things.
Okay, so now Mutang has a quick question, and maybe we can just list it. He says, what does an audit report consist of?
What does an audit report consist of?
Is that a quick question, or is it a very long question, Martin?
It's quite long because it's quite long because there's a lot to think about. And an audit report, what you'll be able to do, most textbooks will show it. It's actually got 3 main parts, but you'd need them to be explained in a little bit more detail than I can do in 30 seconds. So maybe mindsetters, go and grab your textbook, have a look in there, and see if you can find the 3 main parts of the audit report, what they refer to, and what they mean.
You know what? I think I'm having a look here on the mindset page, and we actually have an X sheet here. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm actually going to, Mutang, this is for you, but I'm going to post it on the page so all of you guys can have a look. Thank you so much, guys. We've actually come to the end of the show. Happy Valentine's Day, Martin.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks. Guys, I hope that you're having such a lovely day, and thank you for tuning into accounting. This show was especially for you guys, grade 12s, and I know that you loved it, and I hope you learned lots and lots. So see you same time, same place next week. Bye.